Good afternoon and welcome to another session. Good afternoon and welcome to another session of Low Intermediate English Conversation. We are going to talk a little bit more about personality. We've talked about personality a good bit. We're going to talk a little bit more and then transition into our next topic, which is talking about your major and your career. So I have some questions for you to talk about here. I want you to, in a minute, pause the video and talk to someone else and kind of think about yourself, introspect, look inside, look into yourself and think about these questions. And hopefully the past lessons might help you a little bit here. If somebody asked you what kind of person you are, what would you say? Now that may be a vague or general question, so maybe imagine maybe you are applying for a scholarship, or you're applying for a job, and in an interview maybe you do a scholarship interview or you do a job interview and they ask you, what kind of person are you? What would you say? And of course you want to be honest, but you want to be not too negative, but also for purposes of this exercise, maybe be a bit more honest, be a bit more both positive and negative. What are your good and bad qualities? So here you can be honest and maybe say some really honest things that you might not want to reveal in a job interview. What kinds of things are important to you in your life? What things are most important to you? In other words, what are your most important values, the most important values in your life? How have these values and attitudes, your key life attitudes and values, how have they changed over the years? And what things have changed them? What are maybe some events that have shaped your life and shaped who you are, your identity and the kind of person you are, your lifestyle, your views about the world? So I want you to pause the video for a minute and talk about these questions. Okay, next question. What do you think you'll be doing in 5 years? What will you be doing in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What do you think you'll be doing? Where will you be working, and just what will you be doing in life? And how realistic do you think your goals are? All right, next question. Aside from what you're doing, what kind of person do you think you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Apart from what you're doing, what kind of person do you want to be? This is maybe a bit of a hard question. It makes you think for a while. What kind of person do you want to be? Pause and discuss. All right, next question. What kind of person do you think you should be? There's a person you want to be. There's a kind of person do you think you should be? What kind of person should you become? Should you maybe aspire to become? And realistically, what kind of person do you think you will be? There's the person you want to be, the person you should be, the person you want to be in 5 or 10 or 20 years. These are some kind of deep questions, so pause the video and think for a while and talk to somebody for a while about these questions. Okay, so some of the questions we have talked about do with what you want to be doing or might be doing in the future, and that kind of relates to what you're doing now. here in college. And I want you to think about your major next. Why did you choose your major? Or maybe for a few of you, your major chose you. But as best as you can explain, why did you choose your major? And maybe also, why did you come to this university? What are some things about your major, or maybe the school also, that you really like or that you're interested in, or maybe you didn't have as much a choice, but what are some things you're finding out about this program, this major, what you're doing? Why do you think you are doing this major? What are your reasons for doing it, for choosing it, or at least for doing it now? Why are you doing it now? So pause the video and discuss. Next, I want you to think about some other questions about your major. Now, you may not know a whole lot about your major, and so some of these questions might be a little hard. I just want you to start thinking about these kinds of questions, and these are questions to think about not only for today, but for maybe the rest of the time you're studying in college. Think about your major. Why is it important or valuable? What's the good in doing your major? Some people might say, oh, you're an English major or you're a German major. Why? What's the value in that? What's the good in that? What kind of job are you going to get with that? We'll talk about job prospects later. But why is your major valuable or useful? And it may be harder for a humanities degree. I was a humanities major in college. And I think a lot of humanities majors don't understand how valuable their degrees are, or their subjects, what they're studying. And it isn't just about what you're learning, but what you're doing with that major. A lot of humanities majors don't know how to express or explain or articulate why their major is valuable, why it's useful. Why should somebody major in it? So for you personally, why do you think your major is valuable or important or useful? Why should the average person care about what you do, or why should your family care about what you're doing? And some other questions: what's your field about? What do people do in the field? What kind of work do people do in the field? When you graduate, what kind of jobs can you get with the degree? What do other people do in the field? Your professors, what do you think they do? What do you think they're doing? When they're not teaching in class, what are your professors doing? Or when people get a degree in your field, what do they go on to do? What kind of jobs do they get? Most don't become professors. What kind of jobs do you think people in the field do? So I want you to pause the video and discuss. All right, next, let's talk about particular majors. Most of you are either English majors or maybe majors in another foreign language. Some of you might be majoring in very different fields, which is cool. So I want you to think about maybe your kind of specialization. In your third or fourth year of college, most students, not everybody has to do this, but usually you want to, or maybe have to, kind of specialize. So if you're a major in international relations, your third or fourth year, you might take courses mainly in a particular area. Maybe you're required to do so, or maybe you just want to, so you focus in international relations on modern European relations, or African relations, and development in Africa, or development in East Asia, or something like that. In language fields, like English and other language majors, most people tend to focus on and take more courses in linguistics or literature. Linguistics or literature, those are the two mainstreams. Some people might also focus on kind of education, like preparing to become an educator, so taking courses in language teaching, so language teaching or applied linguistics. So there's linguistics, there's teaching, pedagogy, education, there's literature, and some people might focus on culture studies, the culture of the country or countries where the language is spoken. A few people might specialize in media studies, especially if you're interested in a job involving media, media careers. And some people might focus more on business, the business culture, and maybe combine it with a second major or a minor in business or a related field, especially if you are interested in jobs in business. So, as students in your field, do you have an idea of what you're interested in, especially your third and fourth year? Do you just want to do everything, or do you want to focus or specialize in a particular area? And why? Why do you want to do that? What's your motivation for that? Why do you want to focus on that? Why does that appeal to you? Why does it interest you? And what do you think you might do with that in the future? So pause the video and talk about this. All right, hard question. Kind of alluded to or referred to this a few minutes ago. Most of you are humanities majors. Some of you might be more social science people if you're doing kind of linguistics, especially more research type linguistics. Some of you might be majoring in international studies or where you're doing more social science kind of stuff. But most of you are humanities majors, or at least you're in a degree that the university calls humanities, even if you are doing more like, linguistics research or something. And this comes back to a common misperception of humanities majors, that what they're doing is useless for society, and it's not. Your degree is useful and valuable. It's just that a lot of humanities majors don't know why it's useful, or they can't explain it. They do a poor job of explaining it. So there's a stereotype about humanities majors not having a practical degree, not being able to get a job after graduating college, except maybe working in a fast food restaurant or working as a waiter or waitress, as a common stereotype. And it kind of applied to me after college, because I was a humanities major, not because of the major itself, but because I didn't really plan or prepare for life after college. But there is value in humanities degrees. There is real practical value, and it is possible to get a job with a humanities degree if you start thinking carefully about why and how you would explain this in a job interview into yourself, and how you would plan for this. So in a job interview, they say, okay, you're an English major, why should we hire you at this company? You should have a good explanation ready for that. And one that's not only convincing, but one that's really honest and true. And you should plan for that in terms of the courses you're going to take, or other things you're going to learn, maybe a second major or a minor, or maybe just learning on your own to prepare for that future. I didn't prepare for that, and of course my family was moving around, there were other situations, bad economy, but still I could have prepared better. So I want you to prepare better for this. So think about this. What is the practical value? What is the social value, the worth of a humanities degree? Pause the video for a while and talk about this. Okay, I will probably come back to that question a little bit later. But next, I want you to think about now, how would you explain this to others? You explain to your parents, okay, maybe your family members or uncles or aunts are asking you, oh, why did you choose that major? your boyfriend or girlfriend asks you, why are you doing that? In the future, many of you will become parents, probably have spouses, and have kids. And I don't want to say that you should do that. By the way, I love being a parent. It's great, but it's not for everybody. Not everyone should be a parent. I've seen some people who should not be parents. But do it if you want to. I mean, you don't have to get married to have worth and value as a person. You should only get married if you really want to, if that's what you want to do with your life. Have kids if that's what you really want to do. But if you really want to do that, yeah, kids are fun. They really are. But imagine you're explaining to your kids someday why you chose this path in life. What would you say to your kids? Why did you major in English or French in college, and why did you choose that degree path and that career path? What would you say to them? So think about explaining to your family and friends now, to maybe a future dating partner, to your future kids perhaps, why you chose this major and your career path. So talk about that. Okay, we're back. Now let's talk more specifically about jobs in your career. With your major, what are some different kinds of jobs that you might be able to get with that kind of major? If you have an English major, what kind of jobs do you think you can get? Especially with maybe the specialization or specialty or focus you might do in your third or fourth year of college as a linguist or as a literature person. And yes, as a literature person, or as a media person, as a culture studies person. What are some job options for you? What are some different job possibilities for people with your major, and especially with your particular specialty? What are job opportunities, job options, possible career paths for people like you? You definitely want to talk about this with someone else, with some other people, because you need to brainstorm these ideas. So pause the video and talk about it. All right, next I have some more specific questions for you, especially for people in your field. What kind of jobs might be more lucrative, that is high-paying jobs, jobs that would be financially successful, profitable? What jobs are most lucrative? What jobs might be the easiest to do, the least stressful ones? Or on the other hand, what jobs would be most challenging or stressful? What would be more rewarding or satisfying? Maybe you don't get paid much, but what would be rewarding or satisfying for you? What would be interesting or fun or even maybe adventuresome for you? What are some jobs that would just be most likely or the easiest to get? Jobs that would be relatively easy to find, easy to get hired, even if they don't pay well. What would be safe jobs in terms of job hunting, job searching? What jobs would be more secure or stable? A job that's easy to keep, where you're not likely to get fired or laid off, or have to quit or something. And also, what kind of work environment is important to you? What work environment is important to you? For example, maybe like teamwork and a social work environment where you work a lot with others, collaboration, or a job where you have autonomy, independence, freedom, and you work independently, maybe working less with other people, maybe even working alone, maybe freelance or solo or independent. Think of some different jobs for these categories. And then I want you to talk about this. Of these different factors, lucrative, rewarding, challenging, less stressful, safe, secure, stable work environment, which factors are most important to you? And based on that, what kind of jobs maybe would you prefer? So kind of rank these, which is most important, which is maybe the second most important, third most important, and based on that, which is most important to you, and thus which would maybe be your favorite job or your most preferred job or maybe your top 3 jobs in terms of job hunting. So pause this and discuss. All right, we've talked about different job options, career paths, and your major. Does your major absolutely determine the kind of job you're going to get? So just because you have an English degree doesn't mean that you have to limit yourself to these kinds of jobs. Are there other job options out there? Hopefully you've maybe talked about other jobs out beside the kind of standard English major kind of jobs, the stereotypical English major or language major jobs, or the stereotypical jobs for people in your major. There are other options. It depends on kind of how well you plan things starting now, courses you take, and other things you do to prepare for that career. So, let's talk about skills. And it's different from the major. So your major, you have a piece of paper, you have a bachelor's in English or bachelor's in international studies, bachelor's degree in German or Spanish. But that's the degree you put on paper on your resume. In North America, a kind of a document you use for applying for a job that lists your skills and experience and all, that's called a resume. In Europe, they tend to call it a CV or curriculum vitae. It's a Latin term. In North American English, CV is more of an academic resume used for applying for an academic or research job, and it's kind of different. You can take my writing class later and find out. So in North American English, a resume, and it's spelled with it's a word from French, and we often put either accent marks on both E's, that's the more formal spelling, or at least an accent mark, a French accent mark on the last E. That's kind of semi-formal, but you need an accent mark, otherwise it looks like the verb to resume. So on your resume, your job application materials, you list your degree and other stuff, the school you graduated from, your degree, your GPA, and stuff like that. But when you also write like a letter, what's called a cover letter, you send in with your resume to a company. When you go to an interview, they ask you about your skills, and that's not the same as the degree that's on the paper, on your resume. What kind of skills do you have? If you're a humanities major, for example, maybe social science major too, what are skills that you will have developed besides just your knowledge of linguistics, or your knowledge of literature, your knowledge of British poetry, or your knowledge of North American culture? What are skills? And these are skills that you get maybe along the way that are not the same as, the degree says you have a bachelor's and you should have a lot of knowledge of English, whether it's English linguistics or English literature or English culture from an academic viewpoint, academic kind of perspective of culture studies. What skills do you have? And these are skills that maybe you've gained as a result of the kind of work you do in your major. This is especially true if you go on for a master's or PhD degree. But even for a bachelor's degree, what kind of skills have you gained along the way? So in the job world, we talk about, we sometimes call these transferable skills. You've studied and you've done this, but you've gained some certain kinds of skills that can transfer into a workplace environment. So these are things like analytical skills, research skills, logical thinking skills, skills at analyzing something, and maybe you analyzed poetry or you analyzed linguistics, but you have, as a result of that, hopefully developed some analytical skills or thinking skills or problem-solving skills, and you can say at the job interview, these are some skills. Yes, I'm applying for a business job, but I have these analytical skills or these thinking skills or problem-solving skills that I could develop here in this company and use in this company. These are kind of transferable skills. So what are some transferable skills that you will have gained? Maybe you're still gaining them now, but by the time you finish, hopefully you've got more transferable skills. A similar concept is what we call soft skills. And again, it's kind of like transferable skills, but they're, again, it's not like hard skills like your knowledge of English literature or your knowledge of English linguistics, or your academic knowledge of an analysis of Western cultures, but these are kind of more soft or intangible skills. You can't really identify it so concretely or physically, but they're there. So these again might be analytical skills, problem-solving skills, creative thinking skills, social skills, emotional skills. So what are some of these soft skills that humanities majors would learn? If you're doing humanities and you're learning, focusing on literature or history or philosophy or international studies, what are some soft skills or transferable skills that you have gained that you can then talk about in a job interview or in a scholarship application interview? Because even if maybe some of you want to go on to do further academic studies after college, and that's fine, but you probably need to work to support yourself at some point. Even in academia, you need some of these soft skills if you want to become a researcher, a professor, or you want to become a government worker. No matter what kind of career you go into, you need these soft skills or transferable skills. You have to be able to talk about things that are not necessarily on that piece of paper that says you finished your 4 years at this university in this department. What are some soft skills that you maybe are developing or maybe hoped or think you can develop by the time you finish your studies here in college? What kind of skills do you have now? What kind of skills do you think you can develop? Especially if you plan carefully, plan your courses you're going to take this year, next year, and other things you're going to do. We'll talk about other things in a minute. Talk about your soft skills. Talk to each other and ask each other questions. Brainstorm about your soft skills or transferable skills. Okay, I have a few more questions. When you're in college, do you spend just all your time studying, writing papers? Is that all your life is? What happens when you are applying for a job and your resume just says you finished, maybe you got a really high GPA, maybe you have a perfect GPA from this university, but that's all you have? Does that indicate a very well-balanced or well-rounded person, intellectually, socially, psychologically? Does a company want that kind of person? What are other things you can do to develop yourself personally between now and then? And it's not just for the sake of getting a job, but this is for your own benefit. How can you develop yourself personally besides what you're doing in college, besides studying and besides getting good grades and getting that degree? What other things can you do to develop yourself, and maybe also to write a better resume or job application materials. So your resume is not just, okay, college degree and that's it. What can you do to develop yourself? Pause the video and discuss this. Well, hopefully you've thought about maybe other things you can do, like in terms of, well, what you call school clubs or extracurricular activities, or I think in Korean they call them circles or clubs, school clubs. And they're not just social things. They're helpful for networking, for learning more about your major, things you learn outside of the classroom, or other interests. Extracurricular activities, service activities, doing something to help others, or community service activities, volunteer activities. So it's not just school clubs, but also working in the community, service and volunteer work in the community. And the neat thing about school clubs is if you especially are in a school club, there's what you can learn, you can develop yourself more and gain some more soft skills, especially if you maybe take on a leadership role in a school club and you can say, oh, I learned a lot about leadership as a president or as a treasurer of this campus club or this community service work that I did. And also maybe traveling, studying abroad, living abroad, that can do tremendous things for your personal development as it has for me. These are some things to think about. So how might you develop yourself? What are some kinds of things you might do, some specific things you might do based on this discussion? When I was in college, I was the sort of person who stayed in the library most of the time and studied, and yes, I had a good GPA. I was involved in a few political things, and actually things like political clubs are fine. Now when you apply for a job, you're probably not going to specify which one. I was just a member of a campus political organization or a campus religious organization. You want to be careful of not say which one, because that can bring some bias, especially if you say I was the president of the campus Marxist club. Companies don't like that kind of thing for some reason. But do think about how you're going to plan that. And I'll probably ask you some questions about that for your assignment. Okay. I think that's all for now. I think next week I'm going to maybe pause. This is probably a lot of heavy stuff we've done lately, so I'm going to pause and do something a little bit light. Let's say you are going to apply for a company job and maybe they value your language skills, especially an international company. That's where your language skills can come into play, whether you focus on linguistics or literature or whatever. Especially if you're dealing with international clients, speaking in English, it might be tempting to use some words that have come from English into Korean, but Korean has borrowed a lot of English words, but the meanings are often different in Korean, and you should be aware of that. So I think we might do that next week. It's a little bit of a fun kind of diversion, kind of turning away from what we've been doing, diversion, and doing something a little bit more, a little different, kind of more linguistic, a little more fun, before we kind of get back to this kind of stuff. Because kind of one theme in this course is going to be kind of developing yourself and preparing yourself, like for scholarships and for jobs and career considerations and such. So I'll have some questions for you to ask, kind of for homework. I'm going to see what I can do. It might be Google Form questions at the time I'm doing this video, or it might be something slightly different. I'll see what I can, depends on what I can do in the assignment space in the LMS after I record this video. So anyway, I will see you all next week. Goodbye.